Right now, Pittsburgh's best sports show is about to begin. Call us or tweet us. We've got things to talk about on the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome inside the Fan Cave. This is our business. We talk sports every single night of the week right here at 10:35. It is the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call. I'm Bob Pompeani, joined tonight by Chris Mueller up at 93.7 The Fan. You can just sit up on Twitter, KD Pomp or Chris Mueller, PGH. And Chris, Deontay Johnson now is going to be out for minimum 4 weeks, it looks like, or in that range, a month. Couple that with Cam Hayward out for likely 2 months. All of a sudden now, two really big-time starters and playmakers for this team on both sides of the ball are not going to be there. So what do they do on Monday night to try to fill those gaps?
Well, I think on the offensive side first, Bob, it's going to be more targets when they do throw for George Pickens. I would still say that should be the prescription, even if you had a healthy Deontay Johnson. I think Pickens is going to get more looks. I think Allen Robinson's role naturally is going to increase a little bit. The real wild card for me is how much can they utilize Calvin Austin to pick up some of the Deontay Johnson slack. I think it's realistic to expect, too, that you see a lot more targets to Pat Freiermuth, because we know that Kenny Pickett targets Johnson in part because he usually gets open pretty quickly. That's what he's the best at, or one of the best at in the league. So there's a security blanket quotient there. I think Freiermuth is going to end up checking that box for Pickett, but my first order of business would be making sure 14 gets a lot more looks down the field, even against stingy Browns corners. And as for Hayward, I mean, I'll say it simply, Bob. You know, they felt very good about their defensive line depth. Unlike in past years, they kind of winked and nodded at the idea that, yes, we are going to have to cut an NFL-capable player. We're going to have to let somebody go in the 53-man cutdown. Well, all that depth should be coming to the fore right now, should it not?
Yeah.
You lose a guy that's still a big-time playmaker. Show me that you've drafted well and developed well. Put in Benton, Loudermilk, guys like that. If you got to put Fayoko in as a nose, do whatever you got to do. But show me that you have the depth that you talk about.
Yeah, Armon Watts, another guy, I thought looked pretty good in the preseason. They have guys there. The question is, do they have enough to stop a run game of Cleveland? Mr. Chubb is going to be the man they go to. And clearly, if he runs the ball the way he's capable, it's going to be a tough situation for the Steelers. They've got to make sure that they keep him, in containment areas where they don't give up big yardage. He's one of those guys who can pop it outside. He can do it inside. But I'll tell you something. I think their wide receivers are better than people talk about. And, Deshaun Watson, I don't know if you saw the game last week, Chris, but he looked still average at best to me. He used his legs, not so much his arm. I thought he was off target a lot. So I don't know where he is in his way back to where he was once with Houston.
Yeah, I thought he threw an absolute yacker of an interception, just a terrible throw, and I was pretty familiar with terrible throws after watching the Steelers game. Cooper is still one of the slickest route runners in all the NFL. Tomlin mentioned Peoples-Jones by name. That means you know he thinks he's legit. Elijah Moore, I think, is a shifty, smaller guy that's really good, though, when he's involved in an offense. I like Elijah Moore a lot. For them. So I like their top three receivers, especially Cooper. Watson is a bit of a wild card. The number with Chubb, keep him under 80 yards. They keep him under 80 yards, they're probably going to win the game. He gets over 80 yards, you can pretty much kiss this one goodbye. But I think, Bob, the real wild card is, does Kevin Stefanski understand that his best chance to beat the Steelers is to run the ball right at them, and not to cater to this idea that Deshaun Watson, because he's making so much money, needs to be relied upon in the game plan heavily. If they run Nick Chubb and commit to running Nick Chubb, I think just because they're very good at it, the Steelers are going to have a hard time stopping it and consequently have a hard time winning the football game. But I don't know if Stefanski is a good enough coach to make that kind of call.
He does it against everybody else, but seemingly against the Steelers, he tends to go the other way. And you're right, Deshaun Watson is there because of his arm and what he's been, so that'll be an interesting temptation. Real quick, what we saw from Kenny Pickett, aberration. They got a pretty good defense over there in Cleveland. They got two number ones at corner. They got a lot of playmakers on that side of the ball, and they added Zadarius Smith to complement what they have with Myles Garrett. Was that one of those games, or do you think maybe he's just not as good as what we saw in the preseason and at the end of the last year?
Well, he's definitely not as good as what you saw in the preseason because he's not going against second and third stringers, and he and Tomlin understood that. I think they tried to convey it, but people were swept up in optimism. I don't think physically, Bob, he can play the position any worse than he did against the Niners as far as just no accuracy. I mean, he was missing throws that you would expect an 18-year-old college freshman, if presented with the same pass, to make. So I can't believe that Pickett will be that bad physically in this game. What I do think will be interesting is, does Matt Canada have a better scheme? Because I hate to keep harping on him. I thought Pickett was the A1, kind of the main problem against the Niners, but Canada was just, again, running concepts that were getting laughed at all over social media and by the analysis crowd because they were so rudimentary and playing right into San Francisco's hands. That can't happen again.
I agree. We're going to talk about that and more. Get your calls in now at 412-575-2600. This is the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call right here live on KDKA+.